Welcome, and Concio for Fairy Stamper. Today we're creating this love card. Let's go over the products I used to create it. From Fairy Hugs, we're going to be using the Starla Fairy stamp, and that is FHS058. And she's so pretty, and she's holding a little wand with a star. We're going to change that up a little bit, and you'll see as we progress in our card. From Lavinia, we have Brave and Loved, and that's LAV522. Let's go over our pieces of cardstock. We have some Bristol Smooth, and that's what we'll be ink blending on. Some masking paper, which I've cut a heart out of, and it's the same size as our Bristol Smooth cardstock. Layering cardstock, which is 80 pound in black, and 110 pound side folding card panel for our card base. So now we're going to go over the inks we'll be using. Excuse me. We're using some Distress Oxide. We have Wilted Violet, Dusty Concord, Blueprint Sketch, and Chipped Sapphire. We are going to be using some more ink here, and that's going to be VersaFine Clair in Nocturne. Some blending brushes, one in purple, one in blue, to stick with those color families. Some little gemmed hearts, and I have several here because I can't decide which one I want to use, and some tiny hearts that we'll be gluing on our card for our finishing touch. So let's get started with our project. I'm going to go ahead and put our masking paper onto our Bristol Smooth cardstock. And I'm just going to remove the backing of the masking paper, and this sticks on like a little sticker, but it's removable and it won't damage your card. So I'm going to, once I have that on there, I'm going to press, make sure the heart is nice and smooth on there because we want to protect the card panel. We just want to color it in the heart. So I'm going to start with Chipped Sapphire on the bottom, and I'm just going to put in a nice layer of this, and we're going to create a gradient from blue to purple. So next we're going to move on to Blueprint Sketch, and then I'll go between the two colors of Chipped Sapphire and Blueprint Sketch until I have a nice blend. Then we'll move on to Wilted Violet, and we're just going to fill that in there again, and we'll move between the two colors, between the Blueprint Sketch and the Wilted Violet to get a nice blend. And then we'll go on and add some Dusty Concord towards the top. Now, after I do this, I realize I want a little bit lighter color, so I'll bring in a little bit of shaded lilac here in a bit. Just keep blending this until I get it how I want it. Here's where I grabbed some shaded lilac. I want it a little bit brighter on the top, so I'm just going to go ahead and add that there to the top of our heart. And I just help use that to blend in a few of my other colors. So once we have that, right now you're thinking, wow, that looks like a crazy mess. But you'll see the magic here in a bit. So I'm going to spritz it with a little bit of water and dab up the excess. And I got a little bit more water than I needed. And I was using the Distress Sprayer, by the way. So I went back in and added a little more of the Chipped Sapphire. So now I'm bringing in some Shimmer spray in Sparkle. And that's from Imagine Crafts. And I'm just going to put that on there. Not only does it give us the nice little dots that we want, like water resist, but it gives us a beautiful shimmer. So I'm going to go ahead and heat that front and back to make sure it's nice and set before we move on to the next part of our card. So I'm going to clean my hands really quick because I do not want any ink on my hands when I go to remove this masking paper. Gently pull it off and toss it. Okay, so now we have our card panel all set. We're going to put it into our stamping platform, and we're going to stamp our little fairy on here. It's buckling a bit, I realize, so I'm going to go ahead and tape that down, but first I'm going to position my fairy where I want. I want her legs to be just hanging off of the heart. We're going to stamp her using VersaFine Clair in Nocturne. I'm putting a little extra washi to make sure my panel is nice and flat. It warped a bit from the heat setting it. Alright, I'm going to stamp her. And I'll stamp her more than once because she used a solid stamp. And as you can see, a little piece of her dress didn't quite come through. So I'm going to go ahead and push it down again. And now she's all set. And yes, I edited the constant pushing and checking and rubbing just to save us a little time. So I'm going to heat set this because VersaFine Clair is a nice juicy ink and it takes a while to set. So heat setting it helps it along. And I do it front and back. And once that's heat set, I'll set that panel to the side so we can do our sentiment. I want to get all the inky parts out of the way. I put a little bit of tape on the back of my strip here, which I die cut white cardstock using a stitched little banner there. And I'm going to go ahead and bring in some post-it tape just to cover up the brave and, because I don't need that, I just want the loved portion. And I'm going to go ahead and put the tape down again and ink it one more time, my sentiment, because it didn't quite get as dark as I wanted. Got a little bit extra, so I'm going to clean it off. I don't want any of this extra ink on my sentiment. I just want the loved part. So I'm just cleaning off the extra ink. And I'm using VersaFine Clair again for our sentiment. So I'm going to go ahead and press that in, stamp it, and then I will just move this and set it to the side to dry while we continue to make our card. Alright, so now I'm going to bring in our layering cardstock and I'm going to trim our card top or our card panel down that has the fairy just a smidgen. I just want about maybe 1/8 of an inch border all around. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim this down on all 4 sides, double checking here, making sure I'm going in the right direction. I'm getting the last bit cut down. And then we're going to go ahead and adhere this to our card panel. And I have a little smidgen right here on the bottom. I guess I did my cardstock a little crooked. So I got that little bit off. Alright, so now let's adhere our card front onto this black layering card panel. And then we'll adhere this complete panel onto our card base. So I'm using some Barely Art glue here. Some liquid glue. I want to make sure I got that corner there. And get this on here. And I end up not getting it quite straight. Fix it. And I got somehow a little bit of ink on the bottom of my card. That's okay. I'll use a mono eraser here in a bit to get it off. See that little corner? I smeared it. Don't even know how. Probably when I was doing this sentiment. Okay. So now we're going to adhere this panel onto our card base. And then we'll go ahead and add our embellishments and our sentiment. Get this even on here. And I get that mono eraser here to just clear off our little smudge. So our sentiment is going to go about there. So here I'm going to go ahead and bring in the little gem hearts. These are faceted little gem hearts. They're like a pearlescent finish. So I'm going to zoom in a bit so you can see. And I'm going to put different ones on here. This one is like a white. It doesn't stand out very much. Then I try a blue. Also doesn't stand out as much as I want. Although I like the fact that it brings the blue up. So I went with this pinky red color because it does like stand out, especially against the purple. So that's what we're going to adhere right at the tip of her wand where the star image is. And you have a little bit of it sticking out from behind, but that's okay. It almost creates a flare kind of effect or a little dazzly effect behind it. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of our adhesive here and adhere the little gem down and part of my head. And then I'm going to put a little bit of foam adhesive on top of our sentiment. And this is low profile adhesive dots. And I'm going to adhere our sentiment where I want it. And I'll trim off the excess. It's going to overhang just a bit. I'm peeling off the backing of our foam dots here. Or foam squares actually. Alright, so I'm going to trim off the overhang. And there's our sentiment. So I'm going to add a few more little embellishments. And these are tiny little hearts. And I add a few of these. I add a silver, one's in silver, one in a pale blue, and in a pinky purpley color. I had some by the sentiment around our fairy, and then a little cluster towards the bottom right, because it seemed a little empty down there, so I wanted to give it just a little more. Since they're tiny, it doesn't take up too much. Alright, I'm sorry I'm a bit off screen here. When I zoomed in, I didn't realize I was a bit off screen. Alright, so I'm going to add the last 3 little hearts. And once we're done with that, our card is complete. So I'm going to show you a few close-ups if my camera would focus for you. There it is. There's a little heart that give you a nice little shimmer. And that faceted heart just picks up all the light and looks beautiful. So again, we've used some Distress Oxide and shaded Lilac, Wilted Violet, Dusty Concord, Blue Trin Sketch, Sapphire. We used Braved in Love from Lavinia Stamps, and Starla, who's the main attraction of our card here from Fairy Hugs. Like always, I'll have everything in the description box below. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.